I would say that this is one of the more difficult parts about being a writer. I'm talking about feedback on your writing. Now, many writers know that feedback is really necessary if you want to keep learning and growing as a writer, if you want to stop making the types of mistakes that might be hurting your chances of writing and publishing success, and if you want to maximize the effect of your author platform. But many times we look for feedback in the wrong places or we accept the wrong kinds of feedback. And we have a really hard time kind of discriminating between what is useful feedback and what is feedback or opinions that are going to hurt you instead of help you. Many writers come to me and they're like, go ahead, rip my piece of writing apart. Just tell me what's wrong with it. And then the minute you tell them that there's anything wrong with it, they're very, very upset. And so as a writing coach, I try to really modulate the way that I give my feedback to writers because I sincerely believe that every writer has something crucial to say. And I believe that each and every writer has a really unique talent and unique voice. And so my job is not to make you feel bad about that voice, but to polish that voice into something that will garner you positive feedback from other readers, that will get you writing success the way you want it. Now, we're going to be talking about various types of feedback, the feedback that you should actually pursue, the type of feedback that you can probably ignore, what to do with different types of feedback, how to react to it, how to kind of keep your mindset positive after you've gotten some negative feedback. And also, I'm going to be talking about one type of feedback that too many writers, almost all writers, actually ignore. And it's actually kind of probably the most helpful feedback of all. And so I want to make sure that you're not losing the opportunity to really find out what is working and not working in the things that you're putting out there as a writer. If you're a writer dreaming of becoming a successful author, join me, writing coach Karena Akhavein, on the How to Be an Author podcast, your weekly source for writing information, inspiration, and motivation. Hello and welcome to the How to Be an Author podcast. I am your host, writing coach Karena Akhavein, PhD. Now, I may have a PhD in literature, but I like to keep things pretty simple when it comes to helping writers like you improve their writing and improve their chances of writing success wherever you might be in your writing journey. Now, I'm not a mega best-selling author, though I have had some things hit the bestseller list. But I am at a point in my writing career where all of the things that I'm talking about have actually worked for me. I have sold more copies of my books as a self-published author than the majority of self-published authors, and that's kind of a great win. Do I think I can do better? Absolutely, which is why I keep looking for things that actually do work, and I can share those things with you while they're fresh in my mind. I'm not Stephen King or, some other best-selling author who can't remember what it's like to be there in the trenches. And so I really want you to know that all of these things I touch on and talk about, they've been tested by me and they've worked for me. I've used these things to move the needle, whether it's in getting social media followers, in finishing my books, in writing better books, or in selling more books. All of these things I've tested. And of course, like you, I've gotten a ton of feedback over my time as a writer. Now, there's so many different types of feedback, and I want to kind of quickly go over those first, and then we'll dive deeper into some of these aspects. So there's so many types of feedback givers. The first one most writers come across, and this is normal and logical, it's friends and family. Now, friends and family, you think this is going to be useful because they're supposed to support you, right? They're supposed to be there for emotional support and encouragement. But unfortunately, many times our friends and family don't give us the support that we think they're going to give us because there are many psychological things at work. Their feedback is probably biased due to their personal relationship to you, first of all. And you might think, oh, well, they're going to tell me it's great because she's my mom or she's my best friend. She's going to say it's awesome. But sometimes your loved ones don't want to see you fail. And they feel kind of funny about seeing you put yourself out there. Many times they're going to have a little bit of jealousy when it comes to the fact that you're running after your goals and maybe they're not. Or maybe they're going to feel a little bit scared that you're putting yourself out there and it's going to reflect negatively on them. And I know that sounds absolutely crazy and maybe kind of narcissistic, but it's really not. It's just kind of those funny psychological things that happen to people. And it can be more or less extreme depending on who it is and what they're going through in their own life. But you might be expecting that supportive reaction and you're not going to get it. And that can be shocking. And you can actually have falling outs with your family and your friends. But don't do that because honestly, I say that it's unless they beg to read your book and you know that they're avid readers who can give you an honest reaction and that you know that you can also accept their reaction without freaking out. I would say that many times our friends and family are not our ideal reader. They do have that bias. They might lack the technical expertise to provide an analysis. And so I feel like, why don't you have them throw you a party instead of reading your book? There are different ways to support writers. And I tend not to have my family and friends who are not my ideal reader read my book first because I'm not equipped for that kind of feedback and having to navigate those waters. So really think twice before you use that frontline friends and family feedback because you might be surprised. But of course, if they're super supportive and helpful, that can be great for your mindset. But remember that it's not always going to be the most perfect, most honest and objective feedback at all. It might be better or worse than you thought. Now, the next layer of feedback that I encourage so many writers to get, it's so important. In fact, all writers should have this. It's beta readers. Beta readers are very, very useful because they represent, in general, your target audience. And beta readers are there to provide you insights on readability and engagement for your book. They can give you honest reactions to the story, characters, and pacing. Now, they might not have the technical knowledge to provide detailed feedback. They can't tell you how to structure your book. And even sometimes if they do, they might be wrong because beta readers are readers. Their feedback might be subjective. They're not literary professionals. So their feedback could be subjective based on personal preferences. But many times when they tell you that there's something wrong with your book, they're correct. However, when they tell you what to do about that, they might be incorrect. So take that stuff with a grain of salt, but really beta readers, I would use them for the whole readability aspect of your book. Anything they didn't understand, if they tell you, I didn't really connect with the main character, you might want to start to look at your main character because that is a very useful piece of feedback. Now, if there's only one person who said that and everybody else loves the main character, again, take it with a grain of salt. We're going to be talking about how to accept feedback a little bit later, but that's definitely something to do. Another type of feedback that many writers often look for are either critique partners or writing groups. And this can be very useful and it can also be not so useful. It kind of depends. So when it comes to a writing critique partner, they often have a similar level of writing experience and they can probably provide some really detailed and knowledgeable feedback. They get to know your work really well because you're probably working on it slowly over time. So you're fostering this mutually beneficial relationship if you're doing reciprocal critiques, for example. But sometimes if they're too similar to your own level of experience, or if they're writing something too similar to you, they might not be offering fresh perspectives. And also sometimes you've got these personal dynamics that can affect the objectivity. Like if you told them, oh, hey, I think you need to tighten up the scene, blah, 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 last week, maybe they're feeling bitter and they're going to be nitpicking your scene. Or maybe they're holding you back with tiny little details because they really enjoy writing with you and it like impacting your work. I know some writing and critique partners who have held each other back just from the sheer desire to really be super involved in each other's work. And sometimes they come to a standstill. So I think that oftentimes it's important to examine which personal dynamics are at work. As a writing coach, I have worked with people who are critique partners for each other, and they come to me with personal issues that arise from this. And this is so natural and normal, but you need to have eyes wide open when it comes to that. It can be useful, but I think you need to limit how much you use a critique partner because it can actually hold you back and take a lot more time. When it comes to writing groups, they're really kind of fun because they offer diverse perspectives, and meeting regularly can kind of provide this ongoing support and motivation. I had a writing group for years that I hosted, and it was really great because the people got to know each other. But the group dynamics can sometimes lead to some pretty funny, weird things, from conflicting feedback to maybe groupthink, or maybe all members having different ways of communicating, and then it becomes a little bit confused, or you've got the person who wants all the attention and who definitely wants to take over this meeting. So these things happen. Sometimes the group dynamics can overshadow the useful feedback that you might get, and also the public nature of this, the group nature of it. People might not always be willing to give or accept feedback in this sort of an environment. It can be a little bit intimidating. Keep that in mind. I think that being part of a writing group is great when you need accountability. For myself today, where I am in my writing career, I'm not interested in that. I'd rather use a professional editor and beta readers. But you've got to know that this whole feedback thing, it's very personal. So what works for you? What makes you feel that you're getting value out of it? It's fine to not be a writing group type of person or not be a critique partner sort of person, but to instead go for the beta readers, which I really think everyone should go with, and professional editors. And speaking of professional editors, they can definitely be very, very useful when it comes to feedback. They have experience. They've read other things like yours. They are a writing professional. They can definitely help you to polish that manuscript to a professional standard. However, you've got to realize that sometimes some professional editors, they are kind of charged by the hour, for example, and I don't like using those that do by the hour necessarily. I rather have an estimate and say how much you're going to charge me for the whole manuscript. That's the way I used to work, because then their feedback can become very nitpicky and very critical. And sometimes they've got their own style too. Sometimes they're a writer or a failed writer, and they're trying to make your book into their book. So sometimes writers have a tendency to say, oh, well, my editor said this, and I guess I have to do that. And then they have this reaction where they're like, but that's not what I want to do. And I really encourage you as a writer to take your professional editor's feedback with a grain of salt. Now, of course, they know what can make your book better, but sometimes are they really, making every single change that you need, or are some of the things just nitpicky? Are they trying to obscure your authentic voice? You've got to know that you can actually choose to ignore some of your editor's feedback. That is totally okay. When it comes to agents and publishers, they also can give you feedback because they understand market trends. So what they're doing, your agent and your publisher, they're not doing this writing craft level feedback so much as they are giving you feedback that's going to enhance the commercial viability of your work. They're offering guidance on what is needed for publication. And when I say publication, writing is a business. So many times when my writers get negative feedback from an agent, sometimes it's reflective of your actual writing, but sometimes it's about the market. And so you're not getting rejected because you suck. You're getting rejected because that's not the publishing trend right now. And I think that their feedback often prioritizes marketability over the artistic integrity. So you need to take it with a grain of salt. And also you need to realize what it is that they're looking at. Their feedback's probably going to be pretty limited, especially if they're not interested in representing you. And that's okay, right? So don't count on them for the end all be all, or don't tell yourself, well, they didn't tell me anything was wrong with it. They just turned me down. So maybe it's perfect, but they're just mean. That's not the way it works. It's all about business. When it comes to somebody like me, a writing coach or a mentor, I can offer you personalized guidance that can help you to develop your skills over time. I can provide both technical and motivational support. But I also try very hard to keep you maintaining your own voice. So what can happen is don't think that when I'm giving you feedback on your scene, that it's now finished after a single pass. For example, don't mix me up with an editor unless I'm actually being hired as an editor for you, because oftentimes I want your voice to come through and you're going to need another polish. And many times writers think, oh, wow, I've gone through this process of her giving me feedback on this scene or on my overall book, and now it's done. It's not done. That's the whole idea of feedback, is that you need to have multiple levels of feedback all the time, because just that one professional or that one person or that one source of feedback is not going to be enough to provide you with an overall view. So, how do you use feedback effectively? Definitely have several sources of feedback at several different levels. And then you want to consider the source, right? Is this technical insight? Is this artistic insight? Is it reader level insight? Should I take it with a grain of salt? Is this person a professional or not? Does this align with my vision? That's really important too, because it is important to maintain your unique voice and style, as I say. So you really want to be very balanced and really clear on which feedback actually aligns with you or not. Now, this is really crucial. If I say one thing today that's really important, other than the type of feedback that you forget all the time, look for patterns. When you have recurring comments across different feedback sources, these are highlighting the areas that genuinely need attention. So don't say, everyone's stupid, my book must be too intelligent for them because they say they don't understand it. No, tell yourself, my book is not clear enough for them. So those patterns are probably your most valuable source of feedback and the thing you should pay attention to most. So really stay open-minded. Look at the constructive criticism, be kind of open to it. And remember that you can kind of beta test things. You can say, okay, I've gotten feedback on this section and everybody says that I should, do this. And I don't really feel that I should. Why don't you now have two versions of that scene, one incorporating the feedback, one that's true to your original vision, and then submit that to beta readers or to a professional? That can be really great, right? And you can see what's working or what's not working for your reader. Because remember, it's not just about what you're writing. It's also about the alchemy between your writing and your reader and how they're interpreting it and how they are, taking that in. Writing's not just about you. It's about that whole cycle. So keep that in mind. Now, incorporating feedback, it absolutely involves recognizing the strengths and limitations of each type of feedback giver and also your own and your creative vision. And remember, now when it comes to feedback, you don't want to overwhelm beta readers, for example. And sometimes when you're hiring an editor, you're hiring different types of editor. And sometimes when you've got even, a friend reading your book, you can't be like, hey, tell me absolutely everything that's wrong about this book. You can try to look at different types of feedback so that they don't get overwhelmed and you don't get overwhelmed. So what types of feedback do you have? You've got structural feedback, things like the overall plot, story arc, pacing, plot points, all of that. You've got character development. Is your character deep enough? Are they relatable? Do they remain consistent? You've got the theme, is it clear? Does it get integrated into the work? Then you've got stylistic feedback. Are people really appreciating your voice? Is it resonating with them? Is the tone appropriate and consistent? How's your language? How's your sentence structure, your grammar, your words, your readability? All that's important. And then we go into that nitty-gritty technical feedback. How's your grammar and punctuation? And when I give people feedback on this, it's not my job to give you corrections on every single period that you used wrong, but I'm going to tell you, okay, you should be looking at how you are punctuating your dialogue, for example. And your syntax as well. Oftentimes I'll see a pattern in the syntax and I'll say, okay, now it's up to you and or your professional editor to go in and do this. But so many times I tell writers, before you hire your editor, you want to polish your work to the best of your ability, because if you don't, you're kind of frustrating your editor who's like, wow, they should have run this through Grammarly, or they should have asked somebody about this and fixed it up a little bit, because now I'm spending so much time on nitty-gritty things instead of really helping them to make their work shine. So that's really important. Now, you also have the marketability feedback that I talked about with agents and publishers, right? How well does the work fit within its intended genre? Like, are you writing romance, but actually it's kind of too dramatic and sad, and romance readers are going to be disappointed? Can we frame this differently? How is the work going to be received by its target audience? Are you clear on who the target audience is, or do you need to kind of tweak that? And what is the commercial potential? That's really important. And also, of course, the personal feedback. How much did people like it? That's simple, but it's important. And what are people's emotional response to the word? How compelling is it? How engaging is it? That's really, really, really crucial. So keep in mind that recognizing what is working well is just as important as well as understanding what needs improvement. So if somebody tells you this works really well, that's a great piece of feedback. As long as they're being honest, that's really great. And also your feedback, when people give you feedback, that's the pattern, like I said, that's really important. And also the feedback needs to be constructive. If somebody says, this just sucked, I hated the whole thing, that's not great feedback. And honestly, as much as I would say like, well, maybe it's true, but that's not going to help you to improve your work, right? When you get good feedback, it is specific, it is actionable, and it's aimed at helping you to improve your work. And it focuses on the work itself rather than on personal taste or biases. All of that is really, really crucial. So I would say if you're getting overly harsh or vague criticism, screw that. Okay, that's not meant to help you. As much as you possibly can, ditch that stuff. It's not okay. If somebody's telling you, like, this is not my personal taste, I don't like romance, and so I hate this book, well, that's fine. That's personal preferences. You don't have to worry. Also, if the feedback is contradictory, it's conflicting from different sources, and it's better for you to look at the majority opinion or to trust your own judgment, because you can't be trying to please everyone. So look at who it is that's making this feedback. Is it your ideal reader, or is it somebody just kind of random? Learn how to kind of go through and sift which feedback can help you to improve your work in specific areas, how you can have these new perspectives, how you can boost your confidence and validate your efforts, and how you can develop your skills, right? But feedback can hurt, right? If it's too negative and discouraging, I don't want you to allow feedback to demotivate you, because as I'm saying, every writer has a unique voice and someplace where they excel. It's just up to you to find it. And I want to help you do that. All of my courses incorporate how to do that. And all of my coaching is really based on how can you be the best writer that you can possibly be without being like every other writer. So I don't want you to ever get discouraged. The first thing I'll tell you when I take someone on as a coaching client, or when they start taking my course, I know for a fact that I can help you, because I believe firmly that each writer deserves to have their voice out there. So it's all about being positive without blowing sunshine up your butt. So I also want you to make sure that conflicting feedback isn't confusing you or creating self-doubt too much. And also, though, don't over rely on feedback. At some point, you need to realize that you've got creativity, you've got a unique voice, and you know what? Sometimes that feedback can be paralyzing. I know writers who are like, oh, well, I'm waiting for feedback on this piece, and so I can't do anything else. Dude, you don't need to be waiting for that feedback to keep writing. You can address it later. So don't over rely on the feedback. Like if somebody didn't get back to you as a beta reader, that doesn't mean that you have to stop everything and wait for them, right? And taking all feedback at face value, that can lead to changes that all of a sudden kind of destroy your book. So never throw away work that you've done. Definitely, if you're going to incorporate or do A/B testing, save all of the types of work that you've done, all of the versions of your work. I think this is so useful, and it really saves you having that regret. Now, let's talk about this type of feedback that too many writers ignore, because it doesn't come from people, or at least not necessarily. I'm talking about data. And so many writers are like, I'm an artist, I'm a creative, I don't like looking at all the data, and I don't dive into my computer and into the entrails of my website or of my social media accounts, and what are all these numbers and analytics? That's not me, I'm a writer. But writers can and must utilize various types of data as feedback to refine their craft, market their work, enhance their overall writing career. So let's talk about the different types of data that I feel that you should at least familiarize yourself with. And I know this is not the fun part, but sometimes it actually is fun. Sometimes you can see how tweaking just one little thing can really move the needle when it comes to how many books you sell or how many people comment on a certain post or, who you're connecting with. So the first type of data we're going to be talking about is the social media data. We're going to be looking at the likes, the shares, the comments, the engagement levels on your posts. So high engagement indicates strong interest in certain topics or writing styles or imagery. So that's really important. You can identify what resonates with your audience and use this information to tailor what you're putting out there. That's really, really big. Now, when it comes to your follower growth and demographics, track that. Look and see where are these people coming from? What's their age? What's their location? What are their interests? This can help you to target not only your writing, but your marketing efforts. Another thing to look at, and this is something that I don't want you to be too focused on, but it can be useful. It's genre popularity, or what's getting published, or what's the publishing trend. But you have to balance this with your own interests and strengths and what you're writing. Look at the bestseller list too, because on the bestseller list, you can be identifying common themes, genres, styles, covers, etc., etc. If you're self-publishing, you can probably be much more reactive on this. If you're planning on conventional publishing, the trends change so fast and the conventional publishing cycle is so long that you don't need to think about it quite as much. But if you're self-publishing and there's this massive trend you've observed and you know that you can bring out a great book that's going to hit that trend within a couple months, do it. Do it. But don't do it just because you think you're going to be making millions on it, because you know how hard that is. Also, look at your sales performance data. Track your sales performance, including print, ebook, audio formats. Is it worth it to put out an audiobook every time? How many have sold? I know I had so many people asking me for an audiobook of one of my books, and I recorded 2 and it took forever, and then I put 1 out there. And honestly, I feel like maybe I haven't promoted it as much as I could, but I feel like my audiobook sales haven't really been worth it compared to my ebooks and my paperback books. So look and see how that works for you. But that's really important because you want to see the formats, the distribution channels, and you can adjust your focus and your marketing efforts accordingly, because marketing takes time. It can take money, and you don't want to be pouring that into a format that's not as useful, right? When it comes to sales by region, if they're doing better in different countries or regions, well, you can tailor maybe your language, maybe your, visuals, maybe your strategy, and that can be pretty interesting. When it comes to advertising costs money. You want to look at the click-through rates. So measure the effectiveness of your advertising campaigns. When you identify which ads are attracting attention and leading to sales, you can optimize your ad copy, your images, and your targeting based on that kind of data. Because your return on investment is important. You are trying to build your writing career to make money. That gives you the value of what you're doing. You don't want to be losing money as you do this. And also be tracking your reader feedback and reviews. You want to do some website and email analytics to see where people are going on your website, how many people are opening your emails. Did a certain type of email lead to more unsubscribes? All of that's really important insight. So when you're using data, you want to define what you want to achieve with your writing and marketing efforts. Use the data to track your progress towards those goals. And don't do this just once. You want to be looking constantly, analyzing your data to identify trends and patterns. That's really important. It helps you to build a strategy and to see when things stop working. Sometimes, and this is just the modern world, there are some ways of marketing your book or some avenues that are working really well until one day they're not. So definitely experimenting and adjusting is always important, but take a balanced approach, right? You don't want to dictate everything you do by the data, because sometimes that data gets skewed by something you don't know. But definitely you can leverage that data a little bit to make informed decisions, just as much as you can use other feedback from people and professionals to enhance your writing, reach a broader audience, and achieve greater success in your writing career. That's it. I wanted to keep this short, sweet, and positive. I hope this really helped. If you have any questions about feedback, how to apply it. Or if you want my feedback on your writing, I can, even if you can't afford a full 10 hours of coaching or you don't want to spring for the course, I can do an editorial assessment to you to tell you what the strengths and weaknesses are, as I think, in your passage that you give me, how marketable I think your book is. I can give you an overall view of your writing style, voice, tone, potential audience, all of that good stuff. It can be very valuable to steer you in the correct direction. But again, remembering that I'm one professional, maybe others have a different opinion, but I do offer this service because I think that I am very positive and very objective when it comes to what you can do so that your writing can shine. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me here on the How to Be an Author podcast. And I look so much forward to being with you next time. If you have any pressing writing-related questions or would like to be featured on the How to Be an Author podcast, please feel free to reach out on my website, creativeandwritingcoach.com.